Asterisk rain clouds gathered above the city that afternoon, grumbling like giants behind the gray horizon. Yet outside Mercy General Hospital, the real storm was already unfolding. A 6-year-old girl stood trembling on the rough asphalt, her tiny fingers gripping the hem of her sky-blue dress. Tears carved shiny trails down her dirt-smudged cheeks, and every breath she took hitched like it might break her in two. She tried to speak, to call out. But her small voice cracked and disappeared beneath the roar of passing cars and the harsh laughter of 3 men guarding the temporary hospital gate. Asterisk her hands maul. Shaking, lifted toward the glass doors where her mother stood, pale, swaying, barely conscious. Every time Laura tried to move forward, the men blocked her path as though she were nothing more than a nuisance. Asterisk, they won't let my mommy in, the little girl cried, her voice thin yet sharp enough to pierce the heavy air. Like a plea from another world. Asterisk her name was Sophie Turner. A child with wide, hopeful eyes who still believed that adults were supposed to help, not harm. But she also knew fear. She knew what it felt like to watch her mother struggle to breathe, to hear her coughing through the night, to see her hand shake when she tried to hold a cup. Laura had been working double shifts at the diner for months, doing everything she could to pay for the medication she desperately needed. Even then, some weeks she had to choose between food and pills. Asterisk that morning, when her mother collapsed in their tiny living room, Sophie did not waste a second. She scrambled to her feet, shook her mother awake enough to stand, and dragged her outside, waving frantically at cars, begging anyone to stop. A kind driver eventually did, and brought them to Mercy General, but fate had other plans. Asterisk. The main entrance of the hospital was blocked off for renovation, leaving only the side gate open, staffed by 3 contractors who took their job far more seriously than their humanity. They looked Laura up and down with flat, uninterested eyes. One told her to come back after shift change. Another snickered and muttered something about people faking emergencies for attention. The third didn't even bother to look at her. He simply lifted a hand and pushed her back. Asterisk Sophie clutched at their sleeves. Please, she can't breathe. She needs help, please. But they only laughed. One man flicked ashes from his cigarette, letting them fall dangerously close to Sophie's dress as he waved her away like she were a bothersome stray. Another leaned against the wall, holding up his phone, recording the scene with an ugly smile. The third, broad-shouldered and irritated, muttered that people like them could wait their turn. Asterisk Laura's breathing turned ragged, her chest rising and falling like she was fighting invisible weights. Her knees buckled once, then again, and she finally slid down the glass door, leaving a faint smear where her hand had been pressed. Sophie screamed for help, her voice breaking, but the handful of nearby pedestrians turned their heads, pretending they saw nothing. It was easier that way. Asterisk, then came a sound that didn't belong to the city's usual noise. A deep, thunderous growl rolled down the street. Motorcycles, 5 of them, riding in tight formation. The contractors glanced over but didn't react at first. Only when the bikes slowed to a crawl and parked right at the curb did the men's smug expressions flicker. Asterisk. The engines cut off one by one, leaving behind only the ticking of cooling metal and the heavy footsteps of boots striking pavement. From the front of the group stepped a man built from steel and storms. Asterisk. Ryder Callan. Asterisk years on the road had carved stories into the lines of his face, and streaks of gray threaded through his beard. Tattoos covered his arms, each one a memory of a life he rarely talked about. His black leather vest bore 2 patches, Hell's Angels and RL.CHLLS. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply looked. Asterisk his sharp eyes took in the scene, the trembling child, the gasping mother, the 3 men blocking the way, and the fear hanging thick in the air. Asterisk Sophie hesitated at first, then stepped forward. She wiped her wet cheeks with her fist. Please, they won't let my mommy go inside. Asterisk Ryder crouched so he was eye level with her. For a moment, all the noise, the tension, the world seemed to quiet. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need details. He just understood. Asterisk. He rose slowly, handing his gloves to one of his brothers, and began to walk toward the gate. Asterisk the others followed behind him, their movements deliberate and controlled, spreading out like a dark, silent wave. Asterisk the contractors straightened, their arrogance thinning. The one in the hoodie opened his mouth, but Ryder stopped inches from him. Eyes cold enough to freeze bone. Asterisk move, Ryder said, voice low, gravelly, and absolutely final. Asterisk the man in the hoodie glanced at the others, searching for backup that wasn't coming. Ryder's bikers stood like statues behind him, massive, inked, unreadable. One cracked his knuckles. Another rested a boot against a parked bike, gaze locked on the men with quiet warning. The contractor stepped aside. Quickly Ryder bent down, lifted Laura gently despite her weight, and supported her through the now unblocked entrance. The moment the sliding doors opened, chaos turned into action. Nurses rushed forward with a stretcher. A doctor barked for oxygen. Sophie clung to her mother's hand as far as she was allowed, running beside the gurney until the emergency curtains closed in front of her. Asterisk outside. The bikers waited, silent guardians in leather and steel. Asterisk minutes passed. Maybe hours. Time didn't move the same for a frightened 6-year-old waiting for news. Asterisk when Ryder finally stepped outside again. Sophie ran into him without thinking, burying her face in his vest. Her small body shook with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryder gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "You're braver than most grown men I know," he said. Asterisk before he left. He took a folded $20 bill from his pocket and placed it into her hand. On the side, in messy block letters, were 3 words, "For Mom's medicine." Asterisk the engines roared to life moments later, echoing through the street as the 5 riders pulled away. From the hospital windows, doctors and nurses watched silently. They would remember the sight, not because of the leather jackets or the rumbling motorcycles, but because kindness had come from a place no one expected. Asterisk later that evening, when Laura finally opened her eyes, weak but stable, Sophie sat beside her, holding the note like a rare treasure. "Asterisk, who helped us?" Laura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk Sophie smiled. "Angels, Mommy. Hell's angels." Asterisk, and sometimes one act of courage is all it takes to change someone's forever.